Hi, this is Dawn from Ninja Bunny Crochet. Today I have for us to do this log cabin baby blanket, and it's worked in the granny square stitch. The blanket measures 30 inches square. We start with the center block, and we're going to work 23 of these L-shaped blocks around the center block. Then we have a very simple and sweet shell stitch border around the edge of the blanket. Let me bring down the camera and we'll talk about the yarn I used, the colors, and the hook, and anything else that you'll need to make this blanket. So I used Lion Brand Pound of Love. Now obviously you're not going to use the entire ball for each color of this blanket. What you will need is 4 colors, and this color is pastel blue, and I used Honeybee, which is the yellow, and white. And I have one more color in here, which I don't know if I'll fit into the camera. We'll just take out the white here for a second. I got the pastel green. Now, the amounts that I used on each of these, I'll just keep 2 here in the camera. For the white, I used 4.5 ounces. The pastel green, 3 ounces. The pastel blue, 3 ounces. And the yellow or the honeybee, 3 ounces, which roughly works out to about 280 yards of the white, 192 yards of each of the other colors, roughly, depending on what your tension is. Now I'm going to leave one of these in the camera here and get out the hooks, or hook. I used a I 5.5 millimeter hook, so you'll need that. You'll want a yarn needle to weave in your ends, a pair of scissors, and you're going to want at least 1 or 2 stitch markers as well for this pattern. Now the other thing that I used was, let me just put this stuff aside here a little bit so I can bring it out, is I have a chart. And I will put a picture of this chart up too for a few seconds so you could stop the camera or stop the film, and you can take a look at the chart a little bit and you'll be able to come back to it as well. Or maybe you could even take a screenshot of it. But this is the color chart that I used to make the blanket, and these numbers don't represent the block numbers, but they represent the color numbers. Each of these blocks are actually 2 rows. So, and once we get into making the blanket, that'll become a little bit more clear and understanding when you're actually stitching the blanket. But this is the color pattern that I used. Now if you were going to use different colors, all you would have to do is just substitute your colors in for these colors. But again, I'll put up a graphic of this picture so that you can see this a little bit more clearly in the film. So once you have all your supplies, let's get started. To start the granny square, we're going to start with color 1, which in my case is going to be the white. I'm going to start with a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slip stitch into the first chain that you made to form a ring. chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This chain 3 is going to count as a stitch. So you might want to get a stitch marker out and mark that top of that chain 3 as your first stitch. I'm going to put 2 more double crochets into the ring. 1 and 2. Chain 2. And we're going to put 3 double crochets into the ring because we're forming the 4 corners of our block or our square. 1, 2, and 3. And I'm working over our tail. You don't have to. You can push it to the back and work over, weave it in later, but it just makes it easier to just work over the top of it. Next, you chain 2, and we're going to put 3 more double crochets into the ring. 1, 2, and 3. So we have 2 corners now made. Chain 2. We can just slide our stitches over if we need more room. We can put 3 more double crochets into the ring. That tail. That's 1. Yes, that tail keeps getting caught up there. 2. 3. Now we have 3 corners made, and we're going to form our last corner by chaining 2, and we're going to slip stitch into that tail out of the way, into that marked stitch or the top of that chain 3. So we can take that stitch marker out. And slip stitch right into that. Now if you take your hook out and you look at your piece, you have your 4 corners with 3 double crochets in between each of the corners. Just like a regular, just a plain ordinary granny square. Now what I like to do at this point is to go ahead and pull that tail to close up the ring a little bit. Close up that circle, and then you can go ahead and grab your yarn needle and go ahead and weave this tail in, because otherwise it just keeps flopping around and getting in your way. So this big starting tail here can be annoying, so we just kind of weave it in and get it right out of the way now. Scissors and just snip that right off. Get that right out of the way now. Put our hook back in. Now we need to get to the corner, so we're going to go ahead and slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Then slip stitch into the corner. Now we're ready to start round 2. So we chain up 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we can go ahead and mark that top stitch again, that stop chain, and put 2 double crochets into the corner or into that chain space. Chain 2 and put 3 double crochets in there now into the same chain space that forms the next corner. Now we're on the sides, we're going to chain 1, and now we come up to our next corner. So all of our corners on our starting block are 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So there's 3 double crochets, we're going to chain 2 and put in 3 more double crochets. Chain 1, come up to the next corner, and it's 3 double crochets, chain 1, chain 2, because we're at the corner, and 3 double crochets. I always tend to forget that by the time I hit that third corner. Now we chain 1. And we're at our last corner where we're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets again for our last corner. We do our last chain 1 and we're ready to slip stitch to that marked stitch, which is that chain 3. And we can go ahead and fasten off. And now we have our first block is complete. Now we can look at our chart and we have completed this block right here in the center. And now we can move on to our next block, which should be this green one right here. So now we're ready to start block 1. This is our center block. Our next block will be block 1. Before we move on to that block though, let's mark our right side of our work. Now we're going to bring up color 2, which in my blanket is our pastel green. For this block, it doesn't matter what corner we start with, because this is just the first block, so it doesn't matter. But what we need to do is we need to turn the work over. We're going to start on the wrong side of our work. So we're going to start in any corner with a slip stitch. Chain 3. Now this will count as a stitch, and if you need that extra help, go ahead and mark the top of that chain 3, that third chain, with a stitch marker so that you'll be able to find it on the way back. We're going to double crochet 2 times into the chain space. So 2 double crochets. 1, 2. And we can pull our tail to the wrong side of the work. Chain 1, and we're going to go to that next chain space. And what I like to do with this center block is I'm going to work over this tail and make sure it hangs to the back, to the wrong side of the work. And we're going to do 3 double crochets into the next chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. Then chain 1, and we're going to be at the corner now, and corners are 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Just like a regular granny square. Now we're on a side again, so chain 1, and next chain space, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and now in this next corner we're not going to complete the corner, we're just going to put 3 double crochets. And that's going to end our L shape. Now we're going to come back around to the beginning. So we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Turn the work. So now we're on the right side of the work. We're going to go to that first chain space and put 3 double crochets. Chain 1, we're going to go to the next chain space and put 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and now we're at the corner again, and that's going to be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. We're on the side again, chain 1, next chain space, 3 double crochets, again finish that 3 double crochets, next chain space, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and in that last stitch where our stitch is marked, we're going to do 1 double crochet into that last stitch. So this is our center block and our first and block 1. So we can go ahead and fasten off. And now we're ready to start block 2. Now for block 2, we're going to be using color 3, which in my case is going to be the pastel blue. So, and where we start this is we're going to be looking at our blanket. Here's where we finished off. All we do is take our blanket and flip it towards us, and this chain 4 space is where we start our next block. So we're going to go ahead and slip stitch to join, and just like before, we start with a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3, and again we can go ahead and mark that chain 3. Bring our tail over and place 2 double crochets into that same chain, space. 1 and 2. Chain 1, and we're going to go to the next chain space, which is right here, and put 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, go to the next chain space, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, we come to a corner, and that's 3 double crochets. Chain 2, 3 double crochets. Chain 2, 3 double crochets. Then we chain 1 to go down the side, 3 double crochets in the next chain space. Chain 1, on the next chain space, 3 double crochets. Chain 1, and now we're in our last chain space, and like before we're going to do 3 double crochets, but like what I like to do is I like to take this tail and fold it over and work over the top of it so it pulls it to the back and keeps it to the back. Sorry about the clanking of the stitch marker. That's 2 and 3. Just make sure that tail is tucked over just like that. Then we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and turn the work. So now we're on the right side, and just like before, we're going to work our way back. So 3 double crochets in that first chain space, chain 1, move to the next chain space and 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain space, chain 1. We're in the corner now, and that's 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. Chain 1, we're on the side, 2 double crochets, or excuse me, 3 double crochets, I apologize. Chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain space. Chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain space. Chain 1. Then we come to that last stitch that which is the chain 3, and we marked it. And we're going to go ahead and put a double crochet in the top of the chain 3. And we can see that we now have block 2 finished, and we can fasten this off. Now you can wait until you're all done with the whole blanket to work in all of your ends, or you can work them in as you're going along. It's completely up to you. I like to get a few rounds or a few of these blocks on, and then start working in some of the ends, so you don't quite have quite so many to work in all at the end. But basically all of your ends are going to be, except for this beginning end, is all going to be on 2 corners, because you're going to start and finish on either corner, on these 2 corners. So I will show you 2 more blocks so that you can make sure that you really got the hang of it, and then I'll let you finish up on your own. Okay, again, this is our right side, and how we figure out where we start our next block, looking at where we finished off our previous block. We just take our blanket, flip it towards us, and we're going to start in that chain 4 space with the wrong side facing us. Our next color is going to be our color 1 again, which is white. Now you might say, well, we just did white for this block, why would we do white again? But if we look at our color chart, this is our first block, and here is our third block right here. So in the color pattern, this is correct. So then we just attach our yarn with a slip stitch, chain 3, mark our top of our chain 3 if you need to. Our first block, we do 2 more double crochets into that same block, or same chain space, excuse me. So 1, 2 over our tail, so we can lock that tail in towards the back, or towards the wrong side of the work. Chain 1, go to our next chain space, 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then we go to the next chain space and 3 double crochets. So this part is all the same like we did in our first 2 blocks. Chain 1. So I'm going to let you go ahead and complete this block. You're going to end over here with 3 double crochets. Then you chain 4, turn the work, and come all the way back to the end. And I'll meet back up with you when you come back to the stitch marker, and I'll show you how to end the block one more time. Okay, I'm at the end of block 3, and we're just going to finish off with a double crochet in the top of that turning chain. I like to try to get both of the loops in that turning chain. And then we can just go ahead and fasten off. So now for our next block, which will be going this way when we flip our work. So you're going to hold your work like this and flip it towards you, and this will be where you'll start your next row. And for block 4, you're going to be using color 4, which in my case would be the yellow. What I'll do is I'm going to put up a graphic of the chart, of this chart for you, so that you can stop the video and be able to complete the rest of the blocks. And when we get it all done, I'll meet back up with you to show you how to do the border. If you'd like, there's a link in the description box below to my Etsy shop where you can purchase the written pattern, which will have a copy of this chart in the written pattern if you prefer to be able to print out the chart. So I will meet back up with you once we have all 23 blocks complete. Now that we've finished our blanket, it's time to put the border on. I'm going to use white for the border. You're going to take any corner, doesn't matter which one, and go ahead and attach our yarn with a slip stitch. Chain 1 and put a single crochet into that same chain space that we just attached our yarn to. In that first block of 3 double crochets, we're going to skip the first one and put 5 double crochets into that second double crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Into the next chain space, place a single crochet. Come to our next block, skip that first double crochet right here, go to the second one, and put 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go to that next chain space and put a single crochet. Skip that first double crochet, go to the second one, and 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go to this chain space and single crochet. Continue this all the way down the row till you get to the corner, and I'll meet up with you at the corner. I'm at the end of the row, and here is our corner on this side. So we're going to go ahead and put that single crochet in that chain space, and when we turn our corner, This first stitch here, we're on the side of the stitch. Now you can do one of two things here. You can try to get into the side of that stitch, like in the center, or you can just go around the stitch and place your 5 double crochets, which I think looks just fine and works just as well as trying to get into that stitch. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then in the chain space, put your single, and then you're back to the tops on the rest of the row. So you're right back to skipping the first stitch and working 5 double crochets into the center. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a single crochet in the next chain space. So it just rounds the corner nicely there. So then just continue working the border all the way around to get back to the beginning, and I'll meet back up with you at the end of the border. I've made it all the way back around, and we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet that we made. Do not slip stitch into the chain stitch or the slip stitch that you fastened on with. Go into that first single crochet that you made and slip stitch into that. And then we can just go ahead and fasten right off. And then we just need to weave in our ends. And our blanket is complete. So let's back the camera out here. And let me see how far I can back this up so that we can get a lot into the view. Let's push the light out of the way there. Okay, let's see how much of this blanket we can get into the camera. Well, we can get quite a bit of it into the camera here. So here is our pattern and the edge. So here's our completed baby blanket. So if you've liked this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring that bell so you won't miss any of my tutorials. Thanks for watching and happy crocheting. Bye-bye.